Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic This Week and SaaS. It's episode 689. Got a great episode. We got a great guest. We got Jillian Benbow, the Director of Community Experience at SPI Media. They're the people behind Pat Flynn. Obviously, you've all heard of Pat. I've got my great co-host, Andrew, with me. He's a bit tired because he's been doing a live event. Andrew, would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Andrew from Bertha.ai, and I like co-hosting this thing on a Thursday. It's a bit late in the UK. It's 11 p.m. And yeah, I've been co-hosting the Atarin Web Agency Summit. So we've had a few thousand people visiting that today. But I'm glad to join Jillian. It's great.
Yeah, you've been doing a great job, Andrew. Before we go into the main part of the interview, we got a couple of great messages from our major sponsors. We'll be back in a few moments. We're coming back. I'm a little bit nervous because I don't know if Julian's going to rate me as the same standard as Pat Flynn. So I'm a little bit concerned.
Oh, sheesh. Don't be nervous.
Just go for it.
Because I don't think I'll match Pat's standards. But I don't think I do too bad. But there we go. I'm sure Andrew would disagree. So let's go straight into it. So, Julian, how did you get into the kind of semi-crazy world of online community building and podcasting?
Right. Well, thanks for having me. And Pat is a very normal person, so you're right up there with him. Don't discount yourself. He's just a normal guy, I promise.
A podcasting god.
He loves a dad joke, I'll tell you that. Yeah, so I've worked in digital community for over a decade. I've kind of lost track. So well before the pandemic, which is kind of when it's really, picked up in many ways. And I got into it totally accidentally. I have a habit of looking when I'm on a website, I'll look at their about and I'll look at their jobs, and I'm just curious. I'm nosy essentially. And I was on a website and I was doing that, and they had a part-time, super part-time contract, entry-level community role. And I was like, well, that's neat. And I applied and I got the role, and then, stayed with that company for years and left it as, in a senior position. I'd got a lot of experience there and kind of just been working mostly in kind of the tech startup world and community where it's been happening for a while. But now there's so many tools now that any of us can launch a nice community and not have to know how to code. So now I'm mostly helping other people do the same, learn how to be community builders. And I love it.
So just a quick follow-through question before I throw it over to Andrew. So your title, Director of Community Experience, how do you explain that to people, precisely what you do?
That's a good question. And a lot of people don't understand. Even after I explain it, they're like, that's nice.
You don't normally say that after they've spoken to me.
Yeah. So, I usually explain it as I do. I think more people understand community now, but if I don't really have a good elevator pitch. But I think of community as kind of this, it's everything. It's customer support. It is public relations. It's sales. It's, mitigation in many ways, conflict resolution. It's everything. So I usually just explain it as, I work for a company that has online or digital community, and I focus on growth and engagement. And lots of people just kind of smile and nod and are just like, I don't know. That's kind of a lot of people when they talk about their very tech jobs. I'm like, okay, I don't get it, but you work in tech. So I just say I work on the internet. Yeah.
I absolutely get it because, I know Mike Demo, who's the community manager for Codable, and he used to be the community manager for Joomla as well. Adam Warner. He's the community manager for GoDaddy, and it's becoming more and more important to have a person that people in the community can turn to, but they're not the CEO or the CTO or the CFO, whatever. So they're one level removed, if you like, not down a level, but they can make decisions within the community, and they can also push people in the right direction. And I think that's what community management is all about, with a nice little, you know, glove, a velvet glove with a really firm hand sometimes as well, because, you know, community people can be a little bit, you know, a bit antsy, and things have not got right. I mean, trying to deal with Denwood, you know, you'll get to know, it's tough work. So, but it's you've got.
I deal with WordPress people. They're like, it's like herding cats.
It's just like herding cats, let me tell you. But what are some of the challenges connected to producing content for different media platforms like podcasting and YouTube? You know, with the editing, the getting people to use their microphones properly, and all this kind of stuff. You know, you've got some challenges there. So to say, maybe give us an example of one that was too challenging, and how you address those kind of things.
Oh yeah, so that's a good one for me, because I'm coming into SPI Media as someone who is, I wouldn't consider myself like a digital entrepreneur, right? Like, I was coming from a very structured like community role, which, to your point, and I'm so glad it's becoming an actual profession and, you know, a career path for people. So joining SPI and like Pat Flynn's empire of things, where he does YouTube, podcasts, like all the things, right? He's good at all of them. It's a lot. It's intimidating. And I think something that people don't recognize, at least at this point in where SPI Media is as a company, is that we are a company. So having a podcast and YouTube and all that, several people are working on it, you know? And so it's that phrase, like, if you don't compare your start to someone else's middle. I think about that a lot, even with our community. Like, I have a staff, you know, like we have a community team. And so the kind of content and programming we can produce is different than what someone who's like a solopreneur trying to launch a community can produce. So it's always like, keep that in mind, right? But I would say, with keeping up with all of it, I think, especially when we're talking about people not in a team in the sense that we are at SPI, a lot of it is just like being comfortable picking the thing you prefer, because it's so easy to be like, oh, there's this new Clubhouse, there's these new things, there's this new shiny this and that. And so then you feel very spread thin. It's also expensive, you know. Podcasting is not too bad. Like, I got a Samsung microphone that sounds pretty good, right? And it works for me. It just plugs right in, versus then you get to like Pat's level, where he has like all these things, all these doodads and special effects and whatnot. But like podcasting, the barrier to entry is fairly low, and really YouTube too, but it gets very expensive very fast. And the skill set and the time it takes for like the mastery or outsourcing editing, you know, the cost of that. I'm in a like tailspin circle of rambling, but all that to say, like, I don't think there's like, oh, this is the thing, you know. It's just, what is it that you naturally are drawn to and are comfortable doing, and focus on that, right?
That's exactly it. And there's a chap out there, another English chap actually, Michael Killing, who does a sales course on various other things. And how he runs his business. He is a solopreneur, but he uses videographers to edit out his video. And there was a learning curve with them knowing his style and everything. So, you know, he zooms in and zooms out, and there's graphics that appear on the screen. And it's all these guys that do, you know, he chucks it out to the Philippines. I know that my friend who runs Focus WP, she has video editors as well that do, you know, I'll give them a raw video and they'll bring it out.
She never told me. She
Yeah, she does. She does videos. So Stephanie is co-host on the Friday show with Jonathan Denwood. But, you know, just using the resources that are available to you when you can afford them, you know, that will help you grow your business, grow your community. And certainly I do a couple of voiceovers for Jonathan, you know, in the ads and everything. So it's kind of, and you can recognize them because I've got a very distinctive voice. But the thing is that I'm happy to do them. I do them for other people. So if you can get somewhere where you're comfortable with producing and editing the content that you've got, and then maybe just farming it out to someone else when you have got too much to do and your community's growing and your business is growing, let's face it, Pat Flynn had to start from somewhere, right? So, you know, we've all learned how to drive. So now some of us are racing drivers, not me, because I've got an electric car. But so what do you see really as the future of independent media? And are there any platforms and technologies that get you excited now? Because there's so much, isn't there? And you can fly out there and get like real the syndrome of sparkly things. Oh, what do I? Oh, I like that. You know, in our industry, we've got AppSumo. You know, people are AppSumo.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes.
You know about that? Maybe even you. So what are those things, when you see the independent press going or the independent media going, and what are the things that distract you really?
That's a great question, given what's been happening with Twitter the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I will not go there, but yeah, I mean, well, I will a little bit. Like, I'm a little concerned with where things are going and the idea of who controls what and all of that. But
yeah, just a quick follow-up question about that.
Yeah,
especially podcasting. Have you got some real focus around podcasting? Because there does, some of the big players do seem, it's an open protocol RSS feed, but there does seem to be a kind of bit of a land grab about grabbing podcasting and not making it open protocol, really.
What do you mean by that?
You know, because, you know, most podcasts, you can get them through the RS feed, but like, I think Archer and I think Spotify, they're investing a lot of money, but they're altering customizing the RS feed, so you can't listen to it on other players. You can own, and they're garden walled in their content, aren't they?
Gotcha. Yeah, and that's interesting, isn't it? Because it's and podcasting, I think, still is a bit Wild West. You know, it's still like we all get it, right? We all have podcasts, and we listen. I'm assuming, like, I listen to several podcasts, and it's a big part of, you know, my day to day. But my husband has never listened to a podcast, right? Like, it's just not for him. And I'm like, no, there's shows for you. I know there are. You know, you like sports, and there'll be shows with like insider info about sports and sports ball, you know, and he's like, I don't care. I read articles, you know, or he's like, I read athlete Twitters. And so there's kind of that, like, podcasting has so much potential to further reach, but at the same time, companies like Spotify, companies with funding, they're going for growth, and they're going for, you know, taking over. And so they're messing with things like a social media company. So there's an algorithm, or that, you know, they're putting paywalls and all that. And it's interesting. And I don't know if I really like it, but I also recognize that I have been aware and listening to podcasts since they started, you know? And so I'm used to things a certain way. It's kind of like, I mean, even think about WordPress, like think about back when everybody had like a live blog or whatever, you know, like we were all blogging on blogging platforms, and then those kind of went away, and then it became easier to do your own website, all of those things. Like I was mad when the blog feed, like, I can't remember what that was called.
Blogger,
but like
was it
yeah,
Blogger?
like you could subscribe to like people's blogs, and then all their new posts would just go in your feed, and then whoever had the main one, just got rid of it. And that was kind of the end of blogs for a lot of people, right? And so it's like these tools that are meant to help actually sometimes hurt, I guess.
They do. And I think it's also the growth of website design as well, because WordPress was, you know, by Mike Little, the co-founder Mike Little, an English guy, and Matt Mullenweg, who obviously runs Automatic now. They built that on B2 Cafe, which was a blogging tool, and then forked that into WordPress. And then that's what it was, because Matt was a mad blogger, as was Mike Little, and they loved blogging, but they needed something to make it easier. And then WordPress kind of evolved into this platform that other people plug things into, plugins and themes and page builders. And now we've lost. I had a conversation with a professional blogger the other day, just saying we've lost the way to blog. You know, maybe there is another reason now for another blogger to come along, a total blog platform. We've got things like Medium, you know, they allow you to blog, but then that's behind a paywall after 4 visits. You know, all those kind of people are trying to monetize the conversation, and that's kind of difficult. So I'm very much like your husband. I take part in podcasts, but I don't listen to podcasts. I listen to Audible, I listen to books, and I don't even listen to learning books. I listen to completely off the wall books, you know, not horror or anything, but mostly science fiction. So I do like to listen, but when you're a storyteller, and you're obviously a storyteller, that's why you did blogging, right? And that's why you got into podcasting, because you're a storyteller and you like to tell your story or somebody else's story. And the problem with paywalling everything is it only goes to a certain audience. One, they can afford to pay for it. And two, they're kind of either very left or very right or very centrist. So you kind of, there's those 3 niches, haven't we? And they can get a little bit antsy as well. So you know, Spotify had those Joe Rogan. What's his name? Joe? I've never listened to his. I listened to one show.
You don't know what you're missing. We need to go. We need to go for our break. We'll be back in a few moments, folks. We're coming back. Before we go into the second half of this great interview, I just want to tell you about a live show that I'm doing with one of my Friday panelists. On Friday, with Spencer Forum, we're talking about how to build funnels, marketing automation. You can see all these goodies by joining us at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on the Funnel Show. It's a laugh. You know how me and Spencer bicker all the time, worse than me and Andrew, but there we go.
But you can actually learn something, you know, when it's just us, you just go laugh at us and you say, well,
we've been listening a lot to you, Andrew, through this interview, but there we go.
Marriage, you know, that sort of thing. But anyway, Gillian, over to you. So I'll let John ask you.
Right, let's go on to the next question. So, do you think everybody, when they talk about community, they talk about engagement? They're the kind of 2 kind of trigger words. Community, engagement. You hear a lot of that. I get the impression, I feel myself, getting real engagement's getting harder. First of all, would you agree with that? And if you do, got any insights why you think it's getting harder?
Yeah, I do. I do think it is harder. And I think part of it is kind of the pandemic in particular seemed to bring a boom of smaller communities. And not to say they didn't exist before, they did. And again, I think a lot of these platforms like Circle, Mighty Networks, you know, that you can have like a very plug and play community, white labeled community without the like need to code. I know WordPress has plugins that add community to a WordPress page, you know, these sort of things. It's become easier.
Yeah, it's Buddy Boss. Buddy Boss is the main thing.
Buddy Boss. Okay. And it's now everyone wants a community. So now you're competing to get people in and then also competing to keep them. And that is sort of new. And it's good in a way because you can have very niche communities, but there's also a lot of noise. So getting someone to discover your community and then join and have everything in place so that they participate, because that's a huge part of it, right? It's like they get in the door. Now what? You have to have structure and onboarding so that people feel welcome. And you have to think about how that scales as well. You know, there's a lot that I think people don't always think about with that. But because there's more competition, and then also look at what's trending, like in social media, TikTok, Instagram Reels, it's shorter attention span, shorter and shorter nuggets of entertainment or content. And so I've even noticed myself, like I'm ready. I'm like, okay, next thing, you know? And so having to pull people back in and be like, no, we're going to have conversations, you know, all of that. I think that's a big thing. And so, yeah, I think it's valid that engagement is getting more challenging. I also think because depending where you are in the world, you may be able to travel again for the first time in a couple of years, right? It's like the roaring 20s. All of a sudden, everybody wants to get out and travel and do things. And so then there's also an added competition of the outside world, because we were all stuck in our homes for a couple of years and the internet was a great place to go, you know? And so there's also just the competition of finding the balance of people coming back to your community and still using it and not just leaving because maybe they have a little more liberty, from a health risk standpoint, right?
So when it comes to Pat's show, what are some of the things that have worked really lately, encouraging more engagement and community?
I think Pat in particular is a bit of an anomaly because he has such a strong audience base to begin with. Like, he's been doing it for a really long time, and you know what you get with him. But an example, I think, of him continuing to show that he knows what he's doing and that he's, you know, and that he's worth following is, I don't know if you're familiar with with his side project he's been doing, which is this Pokemon YouTube channel. Which, keep in mind, it's on YouTube. It's not a podcast.
I listen to a lot of Pat, but I haven't been induced to go to that, actually.
Well, you know, it's one of those things. Some people are really into Pokemon, and like the trading cards have a huge resurgence, and he's just really good at seeing an opportunity for something. And he took a skill set that he had, which is YouTube and live streaming and, you know, all of that. And then he took something he's into that. He was one of those people as a kid that collected Pokemon cards. This is like I still don't really get it. Like I'm like, Pokemon cards? I didn't even know that was a thing. I thought it was a game you played on your phone. You know, like, I'm totally out of the loop with it. But he took something that was really big for him as a kid. And so he's like in that group of people. And then he just became a leader. And not overnight, like, he worked hard at it, but he understands the formula, I guess. So I like, Pat's very much an anomaly with this stuff. Like, I think you could give Pat draw paper out of a hat to be like, you're going to start a business about this, and your primary, you know, audience connection tool will be that, and he'd make it work.
Well, that's a talent to have, but you know, I get the Pokemon cards. We used to at school. I'm old enough to remember cigarette cards, right?
Oh, I didn't know. It was like a collectible.
That it was a collectible, but it wasn't me smoking; it was my parents smoking.
Bit like me, I'm a collectible.
I know, but and football cards, and we've had them for years. And when you've got the, I remember my daughter who's only 19 now. She collects things and watches YouTube continually. I mean, it's just great. I said, do you ever turn that phone off? No wonder your phone only lasts 7 months, you know, every time. It's not because you've dropped it, it's because it's just melted. But that's the thing about engagement. The YouTubers, the TikTokers, the people that have grabbed hold of this concept of actually people have got a 30-second or a 3-minute time span in their head that they've got to do this while they're making a cup of tea. So I need to make my cooking recipe. I need to fast forward and this is how you make a pie, or this is how you make spaghetti bolognese. This is how you draw a rabbit out of a hat, you know, all these kind of things. And there was one guy that during the pandemic he was a child entertainer, and he used to do balloon animals.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So he was in trouble because he couldn't go to children's houses or houses and do his demonstrations. He's making a fortune online teaching people how to do balloon animals, would you guess?
For him.
You know, great, you make $250,000 in his first month. So, you know, it's the niching down, it's the getting that right thing, that laser focus stuff. And that's what Pat's good at. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think, if you're in the podcasting world or in the educational world, I think you need to be laser focused and really niche down and just educate your audience.
Yeah. Jonathan, stick with it.
Yeah, so we're coming to the end. Got one more question, and we're coming to the end of the podcast part of the show. Hopefully, Jillian will be able to stay with us for some bonus content. My last question of the podcast, if you're prepared to share it with us, you know.
What's your phone number?
What's your credit card number?
We all learn from our mistakes and our cock-ups. When we're making them, we don't actually think that way. but if you don't mind sharing, what's been one or two of your biggest cock-ups, and what did you learn from it?
How much time do you have?
I'm with you.
So, right.
Yeah.
You know, they're all learning experiences, and I am very experienced. So this question is so good, and I think it's so valuable for people to talk about, because we all are, you know, everything's all the like shiny, very like social media, like edited, like version of reality. And especially with business and things like that, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody, and you know, things, shit happens. Sorry. I don't know if I don't know
That's
how.
fine. Absolutely.
Okay.
We are NSFW. Don't worry about it.
Excellent. Because I must have been a sailor in a previous life, because I can just go. So I'll try to rein it in. But I think it's important for us all to be real about that stuff, you know, because it does happen. I mean, Pat has his own examples. But anyway, so that being said, and this is very specific to community, but I think it's still a valuable lesson. Especially early on when I was doing community management, it's very much like a big part of the job is forming relationships with people who come to the community, you know, because you should be that trusted place that they know they can go for help, but you're also the one providing programming, or if there's a fight, you know, you're intervening, like, and it's this, you're balanced. It's like not a good like analogy or visual, but it's kind of like you have one foot in the customer side of how things work. Your other foot's in the company side, be that your own company, you know, your own brand, or like me in this situation, like a big tech company. And so you're always kind of in the middle, trying to find that middle ground of representing the customer. That's me on my boat. Representing the customer to the company to advocate for what they're saying, what's going on there. And then vice versa. You're having to, you know, distill information from the company to the community. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad, and, you know, whatever. So you're kind of in this funny place, right? And I think a huge mistake I made early on, and I definitely had to like learn a lesson from, and it's really served me since, like it was worth it in the end, is not holding a strong enough boundary with my relationships with community members. And so getting maybe too close, getting a little too friendly with people, and then something happening that they didn't like, or that they were involved in something negative, and then me having to do my job, and them getting incredibly mad, you know, and creating like a lot of problems that were 100% preventable had I recognized how important it is in my role to like really respect keeping my role, you know, holding it back sometimes.
It is tricky, isn't it? Because I think what you're talking about is a bit like a doctor. You know, you want a doctor that's empathetic. No, does care. You don't want some sociopath as your doctor. But on the other hand, you don't really want a doctor that gets so involved that they can't really function, do their job properly. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit of a balance, isn't it?
It is, and
yeah.
And I've had experience of that. I ran a big Facebook group, 30,000 people, grew it to 30,000 people with others, not just on my own. And some people didn't like me so much that they set up another Facebook group just against me and my business. So I've been there, and I know what it's like, because you get too friendly with people, and you do have to have that boundary of, you know, it's a glass ceiling, really. It's a glass window. You've got to stay behind that window, represent your company properly, but also, like you say, advocate and mediate for your community. And that's the whole part of being a community manager, is that you've got to see the other side. You've got to be two-faced, if you like, in the nicest possible way. You've got to see the issues and the technical issues and the profitability of your company, but you've got to balance against that the needs and the wants of your community. And that's one of the hard. That's why, you know, I laud you. You're brilliant to be a community manager. It's a very, very difficult job.
You've got to be tactful. You've got to be very tactful. Something which I'm lacking, isn't it, Andrew? I can be tactful.
You're not there yet.
No, actually, I could be very tactful when I want to.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, I can actually, Andrew. So we're going to finish off the podcast part of the show, please join us for the bonus part of this interview. You can listen to the whole interview plus the bonus content. If you go to the WP-Tonic YouTube channel, we've got loads of videos plus our live shows. There's a load of content over there. Please go over there and subscribe. It does really help the show. So, Jillian, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
Yeah, for sure. So I have my own little sad website. It's just JillianBenbow.com.
Oh, it's lovely. It's lovely.
It's Jillian with a J, which I don't know how much of your audience is in Europe, but usually it's a G. I know that. But mine's a J. So JillianBenbow.com, and not too much over there, pretty basic. But if you want to learn more about the community I run for Pat, it's SPIPro.com. It is a paid entrepreneurial community, but if you're just curious, you can read about it on that page. And yeah, it's a fun sales page. Go check it out.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the interview. Hopefully you agree to come back later in the year. So, Andrew, how can people find out more about you and your thoughts?
Well, you can get me on thisisandrewpalmer.com. Pretty narcissistic name, but I love it. And Bertha.ai, obviously, WordPress.
Never.
Well, shush. Are you going to let me tell people about me or not? Shush. So, this is andrewpalmer.com. And, of course, Bertha.ai, the WordPress copywriting AI built specifically for WordPress, right where you work. That's what he has had a
stressful day. He's been helping run a live event. It's very stressful, actually. We will be back next week with another fabulous guest. I'm not sure they're going to be good as Jillian, but there we go. We'll be back soon, folks. See you soon. Bye. So on to bonus content. So, so when it comes to SPI, you know, it's been a kind of a couple dramatic years, hasn't it, with the COVID and that. What have been some of the major challenges that SPI have faced through that, and how have they overcome them? And obviously with challenges, there's opportunities. So maybe there's been some opportunities. Maybe you can give us an outline how you see things. Yeah. How the companies cope with things in the last couple of years.
For sure. Well, interestingly, the community I just talked about, SPI Pro, that is the community of SPI Media, that was an idea that was going to happen later. But because of the pandemic, they decided to accelerate the launch of that. And so it launched in 2020, in the summer of 2020. And I mean, a bright side of the pandemic is when they did that, that's when I joined. I joined like after they'd launched it because they needed someone who had community management experience to take it. And so that was a huge thing because at least for me, because if they would have launched it later, I probably would have, you know, been doing something else. So it worked out great.
Let's just jump into this boiling vat of oil, shall we?
You first.
That's what I do. I just go for it and it works out.
You were just like, oh, there's sharks down there. I'll just see if I can swim with them. You know, coming out of this thing. Because obviously the pandemic, the communities grew very quickly. People were desperate to earn money. People lost their jobs, which is just crazy. You know, businesses closed down overnight. You know, we've experienced this in the UK and all across Europe as well. So you were literally jumping in with the sharks and having to manage all that. Where did you get that experience from? That's what I'm most interested in. How did you make that decision to jump with the sharks or jump into that vat of boiling oil?
To join SPI and take on the like post launch. It was, well, so I'd come from several different, you know, community experiences. At the time I was doing consulting. I was consulting with nonprofits, which I really liked, but then the pandemic consulting for nonprofits is going to dry up first. And I get it. They need to protect themselves. So a lot of it was kind of just convenience. In the States, they had, they were doing not to get political, they're very unlike the United States. They were doing some more,
especially in the bonus content.
Okay, is this like behind a behind a
Yeah,
special curtain.
behind a window. Yeah, don't worry.
Let me
I mean,
tell
it's
you what
live
I
currently, but you know.
yeah. Let me tell you what I really think. No, the U.S. had like some more generous than usual support for people financially. So there was, you know, we already have unemployment as a federal or a state program. I don't even know, but they were doing like COVID payments on top of that. So I was actually living great. Like I was living off the government in the best way. And before anybody comes for me about that, you pay into it so that you can use it when you need it. So
Yeah.
back off now. So I wasn't like necessarily urgently looking. I'd come from, prior to the consulting, I'd come from an experience that I will only speak about over cocktails. So you'll have to wait for that story. But it was a lot. And so I was being very selective, very selective.
Funny enough, most of the women on Fast for Dates lately have said that to me.
Get off that train straight away. Get right off that train. So you could afford it, and because of the government incentives, Jillian, and we had them in the UK as well. And some people have abused them. You know, that's why some people are, even in the US, they're saying, well, you know, people have abused this and stuff. And I do know people that have, and they will remain nameless forever. But you know, they literally borrowed $100,000 and bought a Ferrari. You know, and it's just annoying. Because their businesses were doing fine anyway, so they thought they might as well.
With the
and then they might liquidate the company a year later. There's been a lot. Currently we're £78 billion behind because of the COVID incentives that we gave businesses in the UK. So that's the debt. That's the debt that's had to be written off. I think it's 78 billion was loaned and 5.8 billion rather has been written off. So.
Wouldn't that be nice? Can I just write off stuff too? Like
you can if you borrowed it as a company, you can just go Chapter 11 for sure.
Perfect.
In the UK, people have just gone bankrupt, and it's just and that's why it's caused some controversy. But what my main point is because you had financial support, you could afford to be selective. And I've always recommended to people in my coaching classes that if you have the time and the financial resources, take your time, don't rush into anything, and make sure that what you do is going to be the career that you want, whether it's working for yourself or whether it's working for somebody else. Now, that's the key, is you are working for somebody else. How's that going? How do you feel about having a boss?
I saw the SPI opportunity and I was very, very cautious. Like coming in, I was like, you're not going to get me. I'm going to suss out any sort of, you know, anything, any red flags, you know, doing background checks. No, I'm just kidding. But so, and I saw it and I saw SPI Media and I didn't know what that meant. Right. And then I looked, I was like, oh, it's Pat Flynn. And actually when I first saw it, I went, nope. And, you know, didn't, and not necessarily because of Pat, but because of the whole like lifestyle entrepreneur thing that in the late 2010s, I guess, was a thing. And I felt like there's just so many like scammy, sleazy people that do that. And I didn't want to be associated with that.
I think you're touching a really important point to me. I don't know, Pat, but you know, I sense that what you see is what you get. I have interviewed and done business with some big names, which will not be named. And to be truthful, they've been some of the worst people I've had the pleasure of doing business with. So I know where you're coming from when you said that.
Snake oil, isn't it? A lot of it, and that's the problem. You know, I made and if these guys, what I find astounding about these gurus and these ninjas is that they say, I've made $27 million. I want to help you. Do you know what? If I made $27 million, I'd be sitting by a pool in Barbados flicking peanuts into it. You know, there's no way. Yeah, I want to help you. You know, there's a couple of million for charity, but I'm off. You know, I'm not going to be.
Difference.
Yeah, I've got to tell you,
you're giving money, not asking for money. Exactly. I'll show you how, but only if you buy my $2,900 course.
I've got to tell you. I've got to tell you, it's not the virtual conference that Andrew's been running, but like 2 days, and last 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, I was also watching another virtual conference, which I paid for. And it was one of the most blatant they just treat. I paid a ticket, and you got 2 days of pitching. Literally,
Yeah.
You just got 2 days of strong arm pitching, literally. And I thought to myself, why had I paid for this ticket? Now, when it comes, just to finish off, I don't know if Pat is a joint founder or investor or what his involvement in Circle is, but Circle seems to be an interesting product. And would it be the first software venture that Pat has got so actively involved in? And has that been a learning exercise for SPI?
Yeah. So I do just want to say, because I was like, because there's so many sleazeballs out there. I did obviously end up going back, thinking about it. I was like, Pat's not like those other people. And I remember that distinctly about him. I remember his income disclosures and just how like honest he was, which was so refreshing. So hence why I joined SPI. I just want to close that thought. Yeah. So it's hard for me to answer that question. Pat is a advisor for Circle, as is Matt, the CEO of SPI Media. So Pat's the founder, Matt's the CEO. And they came together a few years ago before my time. So Pat had been solo for a long time, recognized, he'd been working with Matt's company for things. Matt ran a media company. They decided to merge and rode off into the sunset happily. So they are both advisors for Circle. And I think they both do that with other companies. Pat has other companies. I can't even keep track of everything that Pat does. Like he has the Switch Pod. If you've seen that, him and Caleb, who is his videographer and friend, they did a Kickstarter for it. And it's like a selfie stick, but not. It's like a tripod meets a selfie stick. Of course, it's very Pat Flynn. It's multifunctional. It's cool. It's snazzy.
I was looking for it. I think
I was like, Andrew, yeah.
But it's not here. I've just recently moved house, and all I can find is my portable Hoover. You don't want to see that. So.
Yeah. So like Pat has his fingers in many a pies. And I think that's part of why he's so knowledgeable in so many things, because he's willing to try things. And like with the Switch Pod in particular, that was new to him, and him and Caleb have had an idea, and they're like, let's do this, but let's also like document it. And because he has an existing business, like people followed along. And then of course, not surprisingly, the Kickstarter did very well because he already had a big audience, but he's not afraid to try stuff. He's had so many different companies. Like I couldn't even, I would fail the quiz.
Let's just finish off with one more last question. What's the biggest thing you've learnt by working for SGI?
That's a really good question. Well, I think just based on what we've been talking about, I think Pat and SPI Media, it's very much what you see is what you get. We're always talking about serve first. That's the mentality. And because of that, because that is what Pat's known for, and then greater SPI, like because we really practice what we preach with that's who we attract. Like attracts like. So like in the SPI Pro community, people join wanting to help the people that are already there. Like they come from a place of service. And yes, it's reciprocal, right? But it's very much, you don't come in and then just wait for Pat to fix all your problems. It's about the members helping the members, right? So I think there's something really great about that. Also from my, coming in with like unsure of everyone, or like untrusting, like to have confidently landed somewhere where people are very authentic with that, is just fantastic. Like I have the best job. I always joke, like they'll never get rid of me. Even if they got rid of me, I'd still show up.
You'd still be there. And I think that's what it's about, is the peer-to-peer support, as well as the you've got the people in the hierarchy, if you, for want of a better word, because it's not soft enough for me, but the leaders, let's say, even worse word, but still, the people that started it are the guiding lights, let's say. And then the peer-to-peer support that you get, when you learn that if you give a little, you get a lot. And that's the key, I think, to running a successful community. And it doesn't matter how long it takes to build that community, as long as you still keep your mantra of give a little, get a lot, be nice, be kind, be you. And you've got all these kind of things around building the community to be basically be kind, and that's it.
Yeah.
And,
well, that's me. That's me finished, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you're out of it. Mate.
There's no hope for me. So
you've only got 20 followers. You know, what can I tell you?
There we go. It's been a pleasure talking to Jillian.
This has been great.
Andrew, thank you so much for being my co-host this week. I know you're tired and a bit burnt out. I do appreciate you joining us.
You're welcome.
Tribe, we'll be back next week with another fabulous guest, another great interview. We'll see you soon. Bye.
See ya.